Hi, welcome to Geek Talk. I'm Jonathan. This is
Josh Soul Train.
Soul Train. I'm a professor at Fayetteville State. He's a student at Fayetteville State. Sort of, kind of.
Yeah.
Close enough. Welcome to Geek Talk. We're going to talk about some geeky stuff. My producer has given me a list with little yellow cards, like he does every week. The one question, so you were asking about this just a minute ago. This Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's got a movie coming out. It's going to be amazing. I've seen all the previews. It's like super amazing. Does Wonder Woman have a match? And you said you were talking about
Supergirl.
Okay. When you look at superheroes, one thing that we always have to kind of keep in mind is that superheroes have their own sort of cast of villains and counterparts which are like them. Mm-hmm. Like Superman has a lot of aliens and people of his power level. Thor fights Loki and other godlike creatures. Captain America fights patriotic. Wonder Woman's sort of like the Greek gods. Mm-hmm. And so she's actually, over the years, Wonder Woman started out as just an Amazon. And then later you find out that she's actually the daughter of Zeus and that she's the goddess of truth, which is why the lasso works for her like it does.
Yeah.
But she gave up her godhood so she could stay on Earth and everything else. Actually, one of the cool things when we start thinking about Wonder Woman and how powerful she is the sword that she carries is actually forged by Hephaestus. Hephaestus, is that how you say that? The Greek god of Vulcan and all that. Mm-hmm. And so it's magic, and it could kill Superman. And her shield is magical. So, see, Superman is vulnerable to magic as if he was a normal person. He's not extra vulnerable, but he's just. So in one of the books in the Kingdom Come series, which is the sort of a dark future for the DC universe, Superman's sitting there talking to her, and he picks up the sword and he's playing with it, and he cuts his finger. And he said, "I forgot how sharp this was." And so, Wonder Woman can be pretty beastie when you get down to it, and at times she's the second strongest. Depends on if the Martian Manhunter's in play and what type of Martian Manhunter, because there's some that's more mental. It depends on how he's being written. Yeah. But she's the second physically strongest Justice League member.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think she could take Supergirl. It really depends who's writing it and how mean they want to make Wonder Woman.
But also, like you said, if Wonder Woman isn't holding back, like I think she could defeat Supergirl because not only does she have strength, she has training and fighting skills.
Definitely, it's the holding back thing.
Mm-hmm.
She's more likely to not hold back subconsciously because she is trained, whereas Supergirl subconsciously, in the end of the Justice League animated series that Bruce Timm did, and Superman is fighting Darkseid, he goes through this monologue about, do you know what it's like to live in a world where you always have to watch yourself and you always have to be careful because I'm living in a world of cardboard, and it's because he's so strong. He and Supergirl and all of them inherently always monitor themselves. Wonder Woman, not so much, because she tends to fight people that she can let go on, whereas Superman and Supergirl, they always tend to, their villains are usually like Lex Luthor and stuff. I mean, honestly, Lex Luthor's biggest thing is he wears an armor and he has no helmet. I don't know why they just don't heat vision him in the face. Okay, you lose.
But that's their weakness. Like Superman, whenever he was fighting Batman, his weakness is his kindness and the holding back that he has.
And that's where when that gets taken away, like they get mind controlled and other things like that, that's when you really start seeing. Because you watched The Flash last night, right?
Yes.
And Green Arrow's like, don't hold back. Even with me, don't hold back. And I'm like, dude, if she doesn't just kill you, she's holding back. You're a dude with a bow.
That's true.
I mean, she can fly, heat vision, invulnerable. I mean, they showed all those guys attacking her. She's just hovering in the air, kind of laughing.
Yeah, that's true. I noticed that.
And if they can't beat her, and she can't beat she's one-on-one with the Dominator, and 18 of them got out of that little ship. It was like a little like a clown card. Like, we need to delete that part. I just screwed up and said a very bad word. Sorry. You want us to start over? He's not talking. He's not listening. But it was But when he crashed and the aliens came all running out, it was just like 13 aliens, and he was standing from the ship, and so it was. So I'm not sure how big they're supposed to be, if it's like an interdimensional vehicle or something like that, because that was, I mean, they're kind of cool. All right, so taking it from there, the next thing, did you have any of these questions you wanted to ask? All right. So,
I mean, we can talk about what we were talking about Wally and Barry.
Oh, okay. So you, one of the questions that we just talked about was who's the fastest speedster? And so again, my producer has given us a list of different speedsters. This is Speedster Index.
Yes.
There's another site called Those Who Ride the Lightning, which is another site that's got a lot of speedsters. The fastest speedster, it all goes down to what universe you're looking at. In the DC universe, Barry Allen's the fastest, without a doubt. He's always been the fastest. He taps the most directly into the Speed Force. There have been times where he doesn't seem like he's the fastest, like others, like Salvatore and a few others that have shown up that seem to have better control over the Speed Force. But in the end, he always sort of figures out how to tap it and pull it, the Speed Force out faster and better.
Yeah.
He has the potential to beat any of them. So they always show up and they always seem faster when they first get there, but then they.
It's like he doesn't use it at the right moments, or when he really needs to use the Speed Force and be faster, that's when he uses it.
Yeah, and there was a time when he first came back where he basically said he had the power he could manipulate the Speed Force. And so if I was Barry and I was a speedster and you were a speedster, I could literally pull the Speed Force out of you and pull it into me, so I could get even faster.
Yeah.
So one of the things and reason why Barry wasn't so fast all the time was there were so many other speedsters. And so when he needs the speed, he can drain it from the others.
Yeah.
This has sort of hurt them in the past, like when Jesse Quick was fighting somebody else and he started pulling the super speed from her. And she was a long ways away. He didn't even know she was in a fight, and he started doing it and sort of became an issue. But in like the Marvel universe, my producer, he wanted to know about the Runner. The Runner is one of the guys like the Grandmaster. They were the last of their species. They were the first races of the new universe, and they're the last of their race. And each of them sort of focus on one thing. They're called the Elders of the Universe. And one is like a game master. One is the Collector. You saw him in the end of the Guardians of the Galaxy. He's the guy, the sort of weird punk rock dude that had the collection. Have they shown you the other ones yet? They've shown the Collector, but there's the Grandmaster. He's the guy who likes to play games. He'll probably be in the second one. There's the Gardener, and then there's the Runner. And the Runner he's all about speed and running fast and everything else. And so I would say he's the fastest person in the Marvel universe. But years ago, they did this thing where they had this race across space. And so the Runner and all these other speedsters, they're probably on this list from the Marvel universe, and they all got together and they were running on this energy bridge that was created through space over this vast distance. And the Runner's just wiping them out. And just as he gets to the end, you see this guy appear at the starting line, and he's got a blonde beard, and his costume's all tore up, and they said, "Are you here for the race?" And he goes, "There's a race," and he looks up and he sees the bridge, and so the Runner is within sight of the end line, and that guy passes him.
Yeah.
Runs past him, and they're at the end, and the Runner stops, and he's like, "Who are you?" And he goes, "I can't remember. It's like buried alien or something like that." And then he moves through this dimensional barrier back to wherever. And it was at the same time that he dies in the DC universe.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a running joke. So it's always been the buried alien is faster than.
I was about to ask you that to see if like maybe Barry was faster than him, and then.
Well, that's what that was kind of the joke, because the Flash is always faster than everybody.
Yeah.
And they always did the race thing where it was like Superman versus the Flash. And for years, it was always Superman could keep up with him, and it was an issue couple years ago, and the Justice League had come to try to catch the Flash to bring him in because of something, and it was because of Flash's kids. Something was wrong with his kids, and they were trying to force him to get his kids to this person or something. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
But basically, Barry was carrying his kids, and Superman's like gets up on him, and he's like, Barry, you know you can't outrun me. I can stay with you forever. And he's like, Clark, those races were for charity. And bam, gone. Just left him standing there. He was like, oh my land. He didn't even realize how fast the Flash is.
Yeah.
And so, he can kind of pass that up. That's why last night when Flash went, well, she's as fast as I am. No, she's not.
Because he was probably holding back when they raced in the Supergirl episode.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, the problem with speedsters inherently is that they're not really good story.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Flash is a great character in his super speed, but when honestly, at the bottom of this list, there's a guy called Quicksilver. He's in Marvel Comics, and he's appeared in the recent movies. He's super fast, but he's not so fast. In the movies, they made him even faster. They made him more like the Flash. In the comics, when he first appeared, he could run like 700-800 miles an hour. You could see him. I mean, he was fast. If you were standing still, he would seem to just shoot past you. But he would fight like the X-Men, Cyclops, the Beast, Angel. And so he was in the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And so I always thought that made more sense and he had to slow down to fight them because he could only go like 700-something miles an hour when he was in a straight line and it was unobstructed.
Yeah.
It's like when you're sprinting, you don't, if you're sprinting through a group of hallways, you can't run at your full speed. You go in a burst and you slow down, turn, slow down and turn. And so that's how they would beat him, is they would have to get him in a more enclosed environment. Whereas the one in the movie, they were in that kitchen area and there was like 30 guys in there and he just stopped time and kind of went around and moved bullets. And
that's why I noticed that Quicksilver was much faster than the one in the Avengers. Mm-hmm. And he just seemed a lot faster.
The one in the Avengers is closer to the original.
Mm-hmm.
And I always like that because, I mean, that when you're dealing with these kinds of stories, a character is only as interesting as the situations and the threat that he's in. I always enjoy the heroes where you have that anticipation. Can they lose? When Superman shows up and there's bank robbers, there's no fear. He's going to stop the bank robbers. Now, if one of them has a kryptonite bullet, that raises the game up. When the speedster is so fast that he can run in, reshape the room, and then everybody knock themselves out.
Yeah.
I mean, how could Magneto beat him?
Well, like we saw in the Apocalypse, he had that shield that he couldn't go through. And I also think that they kind of weakened his speed by showing he wasn't fast enough to save the guy who shoots the lasers out of his chest, or the rings out of his chest.
Hobbit.
Yeah, he wasn't fast enough to save him. But he didn't know he was there, but still he wasn't fast enough to save him from the fire.
Yeah, they were trying to balance it a little bit, but I mean, the fact that he could outrun an explosion, and not only outrun it, but it's happening, and he can run in, run out, run in, run out, run in, run out, run in, and come out. I get it, he's fast. He should have been able to get 4 or 5 people out as he's running in.
But he got everybody out.
The only person he didn't get out was the guy standing at ground zero who was already dead when he entered the space. Because when he walked in and looked, he looked down towards the explosion, and the guy was already gone. Mm-hmm. So that means the explosion had already passed him.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of like he turns it on and off. As he's getting out, he sees the explosion, and he cuts the super speed on.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. Super speed is one of those hard kind of powers to have. How do you regulate that?
It's kind of like in this episode, Wally came in and he like knocked over Sarah and everyone else, but he didn't notice Supergirl coming up like behind him. Like if he could have like triggered the Speed Force, like if he turned back and he saw her, then the Speed Force would have triggered, but like it's like he kind of turned it off and on.
Well, that comes from and they're trying to imply that he's not that well trained, but I don't know where they're going to go with that. I mean, we'll see. I always liked Wally as a kid, but we could always see Impulse, which is Barry Allen's kid from the future, and he comes back. He's But we'll see how that plays out. Okay, the other thing that they talk about is he has like a list of death matches, which is kind of interesting. Like who could give Galactus a run for his money? For those of y'all that don't know, Galactus is a Jack Kirby Stanley creation, Fantastic Four, I think.
The Eater of Worlds or Destroyer of Worlds.
Yeah, basically he shows up and he absorbs the life energy of a planet and it keeps him going. He's a character, he's actually the last person, which is kind of interesting, from the previous universe, before the Big Bang Theory, before their universe collapsed and rebirthed into our universe, which created the races that became the Elders. He was the last survivor of that, and so he came shooting through, and for whatever reason, Death and Eternity and all of them decided to keep him and use him as sort of an avatar. He rides around and eats planets, basically. But he has what would be considered godlike powers. He can rearrange atoms and molecules. He has telepathy, and he's a giant. He's like 30 feet tall. And his size is relative to the amount of energy that he has. So a couple of times when he's come to Earth and he's been deprived of a lot of energy, up to that point he's smaller. And they can actually give him a fight. Who can give him a run for his money? He's got on here, can Odin versus Galactus. Yeah, any of those guys can. Even like Silver Surfer can on some level.
There can the Fantastic Four, Silver Surfer, we saw kind of a glimpse of that.
Yeah, and that was kind of that's actually Hawkins back to the original story. When he showed up, Galactus was funny looking because he had on like shorts. It was like really weird. One of those Kirby designs. It's a lot of lines and stuff.
Yeah.
And he comes to Earth and he's got Silver Surfer with him, who's this herald who goes around and finds planets. And just like in the movie, basically what happens is Silver Surfer his compassion is reawoken. When he became the Silver Surfer, he was Norrin Rand, and he sacrificed himself. Galactus showed up to eat his planet, and Galactus basically at that point was just like a wandering kid in a supermarket, and he was eating whatever he could find. And so Rand basically says, "Hey, I will go find you planets. You can send me out, and I will find you planets to sustain you, and if you spare my planet." And Galactus agrees, because then that way he has basically a designated shopper. Go find me something.
Yeah.
Which is cool. And so he does, and he sends him on his way. But when he gives him the power cosmic and turns him into the Silver Surfer, it suppresses his emotions. Galactus does this to keep Rand from losing his mind, from walking away from his people and the woman he loves and everything else. But when he gets to Earth and he starts getting these flashes, when he sees Sue, and I don't know if it's Sue or if it's Alice, Ben Grimm's, Alice, not Alice. It's the sculptor. I'm drawing a blank. But he sees this frail human who shows him compassion, even though he's different.
Yeah.
And so he decides to stand against Galactus, to turn Galactus away from this planet, but he has nothing to do but fight him. So he actually fights him, and Galactus basically has given him the power cosmic, which is the same power that Galactus is drawing from, and so it's able to hurt him. And so Galactus gets mad, and he's like, "Fine, you want these people, you can stay here." And he makes an energy barrier around the planet so that Silver Surfer can never go home. He's trapped on Earth.
Yeah.
Years later, that story goes, he gets out and everything else. He ends up back in space. But as part of the punishment, Galactus has moved his planet so that he can't find it. And so even when he gets back out into space, the guy's starving to death, but he has the power to move a planet. He's Galactus. It's one of those things, it's like in the 1960s when they had the Star Trek episodes and they couldn't come up with a good villain. They just gave, he has the power to do anything, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it really gets down, because the next question he asks is how powerful is Odin? And I guess that's to give a comparison. Odin wields a thing called the Odin Force, and it's basically the energy that he absorbed from his two brothers, and I think some Fenris wolf thing or something. In the comics is different than in the mythology. But
Yeah.
he's powerful enough. He can go toe-to-toe with Galactus in the Asgardian micro-universe, the little realm. Because same with Darkseid. Darkseid can fight Galactus if Darkseid if he comes to Apocalypse.
Yeah.
Because then Darkseid can draw the power from Apocalypse to fight him. Galactus has his enemies. There's like Eros, the planet. It's like a living planet that's all sentient, and all the creatures that live on it are just cells, kind of thing. And Galactus wants to eat him. It's just a thing. All right, next thing. Still have more notes. The TV crossover. You keeping up?
Yeah, the Supergirl really didn't.
Sucked.
It didn't have anything to do with the crossover. Only with 3 portals opening and Barry coming in the end. So.
Yeah, I was mad, and I was impatiently waiting for this.
Same. I was like waiting. I'm like, where's Barry? I thought he was gonna come in the beginning and help her, and then they were gonna leave. But then
see, that would have made sense.
It would have made a lot more sense. But like I read online, they were saying that they wanted to show the mid-season finale, real quick, and combine it with the crossover. So that's why they did all that. But I think it's also because they wanted more viewers, because maybe there are more viewers for Flash and Arrow than there are for Supergirl. And like me, I only watch Supergirl because Flash is on it. So.
No, I watch Supergirl. I watch all 4 of them religiously, but yeah, I was really hoping it was going to be something more substantial, and I was honestly hoping that he would show up. The thing that I didn't like is when we see them, and if you haven't watched any of them, this is your time to cut this off because we're about to go into spoilers. But he shows up at the end, so it's really just a Supergirl episode with a couple of weird little portals trying to open, and then Flash shows up in the very end. She doesn't get together Team Supergirl. You know, in the Flash episode, the next one they say, oh, Team Arrow, Team Flash, Team Legends, and then Supergirl.
Yeah.
Supergirl has her team. She could have brought the Martian Manhunter. She could have brought Mon-El. She could have brought the Guardian. She could have brought, Miss Martian. She could have brought a whole herd of people.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm honestly, her herd would be a whole lot more powerful than the ones that were already there.
That's true.
I mean, Legends aren't too bad, but they were a little light in the Flash episode too. It's like I don't understand why they left people in the time stream or the time ship or whatever it is they're doing. But I read that too, that they wanted to have the mid-season finale, but they wanted to include it in the crossover part.
Yes.
He should have showed up in through the first portal, helped her resolve her mid-season finale, and maybe even came and let Cisco Vibe help. Let Cisco really break out the powers and maybe find out that he's a little bit more powerful in her world or something.
Yeah.
And, you know, that would have been cool to do something along those lines. But just to have them, "Boop, hey, we're at the very end and come with us, I need your help." And then she doesn't get her team together to go back. It's just.
And she kind of seemed like a bit too happy to leave. Like she was really excited to leave her Earth.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, the argument could be made that she didn't want to take all of her people because she didn't want to leave her world unprotected. But she could have brought Mon-El. She could have brought, you know, Miss Martian. I mean, if she didn't want to take the Martian Manhunter, I mean, I could see why you wouldn't take Superman because it wouldn't leave her world unprotected.
Yeah.
But she could have brought 1 or 2 of the other people over. That would have been.
That's true.
It would have been interesting. And then, you know, if they wanted to, Mon-El could have like stayed in the Arrowverse. And then you could have had Mon-El in their world, sort of like make his own way, you know.
Yeah.
I don't want to live in the shadow, and you know, Daxam's gone. He can't go back. So what's one universe to another if my home world doesn't exist?
That's true. And then they could always use another superpowered individual like a Kryptonian, because he's very similar to one.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, he's close enough that and you could, when he gets over to the world, it could have been like, oh, and that whole lead thing doesn't affect him in our universe. Suddenly he's Superman.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's something.
And we also figured out that they're from Earth 38, so now we know a number of the Earth. So
Yeah, she's on Earth 38, which is, I don't know what, in the comics, I used to know the worlds a lot better, but when they got into the 30s and 40s, it was hard to keep track. So I don't keep track. I got the 2-minute warning. All right, important things. Let's see. Young Justice 3, that's been announced.
Yeah, there aren't any recent news, but it has been announced.
Yeah, and I'm just going to keep mentioning it because it makes me feel good about the universe.
Yep.
Walking Dead, it's kind of slow going this.
Yeah, the new group, I think her name was Tara, she found, with only the girls and the children. I think that's going to be, there's something they're hiding. I think that group, maybe the Saviors did do that to them, like did kill all the men, but I think there's something they're hiding from.
Well, see, I thought different on that. I thought that my take on that was they're hiding. But what we see now is we're seeing them show, we've seen the kingdom, we've seen the hilltop, we've seen these hidden people that have fought against the Saviors. And so we're starting to see these groups that have risen up against them. And the opportunity is now to start to unite them.
That's what happens in the comics. All the groups unite, and then they go and attack the Saviors, and then they kind of make Negan step down, and then the blonde guy with the burn on his face, I forgot his name.
Oh, the one that right now is a bad guy.
Yeah, he becomes the leader, and then he kind of like is more admirable to the other groups, and he doesn't impose their strict views on them like Negan did.
I could see that, and that's because I keep thinking every time, and like I don't read the comics. That's one of the few comic books I just never got into until it was popular, and then my students started bringing it like, oh, you need to see this. But we've been watching the episodes, and so I'm doing it just from a straight. I made it a point not to read the comics because I enjoy the surprises of things, and so watching it, I keep seeing this guy, and I'm like, okay, he's a bad guy. And you're kind of like, you see that he's gone through all these things. So, is he really a bad guy, or is he just responding to the world he's living in? Would he be a better person if the world was a better place for him?
Yeah.
And so I think that might be what they're building towards. But I think that's what they're doing is they're creating enough of a population that they could rise against the Saviors and be a substantial force. Okay, so I know we're running running short on time. Doctor Strange, have you seen it yet?
Yes,
What did you think?
It was really good. I liked the comedy. Like, it was more than Ant-Man, but not as much as Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
So it was like
That's
a good
balance. I didn't think about
like
that.
good comedy, but not like, because Guardians of the Galaxy was more of like a comedy movie than it was action. Like, it had its good action scenes, but it was more comedy with Star-Lord and all that.
Yeah.
But
Star-Lord, man.
yeah, but Doctor Strange was pretty funny, and with Wong and all that.
I like the fact that they took the character of Wang, because in the comics, Wang was very, how can I say this politely? It was a very racist type character. He was a manservant, and he didn't really do a whole lot.
Yeah.
And it was maybe about the 70s you find out that Wang was a master of the martial arts. And you're like, okay, but he hangs out with all these wizards, but he does martial arts. And then you find out in this, they've kind of recast that idea to where he's not a manservant, he's the librarian. He's sort of, he's much more involved. And that being Asian is just a byproduct of it's not a central part of the character, it's just that's what he is, and he's the librarian, he's a wizard, and he knows all this, and he holds a certain amount of, his personality puts him in that situation. It's not as it was in the comics. It was when he was created in I think in the 60s. Yeah, it was when Doctor Strange first appeared. It was very stereotypical kind of writing. But I like how they're re-envisioning these characters, and I liked Mordo. I liked the way they went with that, where he said the world has too many sorcerers.
Yeah.
And he said that was kind of cool, and
because he seemed like the sidekick, like he was gonna be Doctor Strange's sidekick, and that's what the Sorcerer Supreme, Is that her name? She hoped for, but then he became what she like caused. Like he said, since she did this, and now Doctor Strange broke the rules, now I'm gonna do this. So,
and which is cool because in the comics, basically, the Ancient One is training both Strange and Mordo. They're both just apprentices, and Mordo is plotting with Dorma, and Doctor Strange catches him, and he basically casts a spell which puts this invisible piece over Strange's mouth, so Strange can't say, he can't tell the Ancient One the truth. He can say anything he wants so long as it doesn't revolve around that.
yeah.
And so, but the Ancient One actually knows what's going on, and he basically, when Strange goes out of his way to risk hurting himself to let him know that he was being plotted against, he chose him to be the new Sorcerer Supreme because he knew that Mordo. So it's kind of interesting that Mordo is not. He's sort of become a dark anti-hero. He wants to save the world from sorcerers, and we'll see how that plays out. Rogue One's coming. Go see it.
2 weeks, I think it is.
2 weeks. It's all going to be a long 2 weeks. The Assassin's Creed movie. My son was bringing it up. He's 10. It's kind of something he's really into.
Yeah, it may be good. Like, not many game to movie adaptations have been that great. Hopefully this breaks the streak, because if it does, I'm looking forward to an Uncharted movie possibly. So,
but we're also seeing the problem in the past has always been that the games, the story arc is very thin. It's more about the jumping over the mushrooms or getting through this. Games have become so developed in their story arcs that they're actually something that you can leap off of.
yeah.
I mean, it's like Rogue One is, I mean, not a lot of people, I mean, one of my students was explaining to me that it's actually, it references the first movie where they say a lot of people gave up their lives to get this information to us about the Death Star, but the characters in it are from
Dark Forces, Star Wars.
So they're from video games.
Yeah.
So we're seeing these story arches that are generating from alternative sources, coalescing to create new story arches. So
Yeah.
I think it's all cool. We're going to cut it there because apparently we went way past our 2-minute warning. Again, if you have any questions, we'll throw an email up. Just throw us an email and we'll answer whatever questions you can come up with, or we'll sit up here and keep just talking about whatever, because that's what we do. Thanks. Oh yeah, I forgot.
Had to remind you.